Amazing. I also want to say thank you to our wonderful presenting sponsors. They've invested to the elevation of this conversation around the globe. We wouldn't be here without you. And again, thank you so much for committing some resources into this conversation. Julia Patrick joins me as the co-host of this show, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. And I am so honored, Julia, that you asked me to join you. I'm Jarrett Ransom, your nonprofit nerd, CEO of the Raven Group. And today, Jeffri-Lynn is joining us. Good morning, Jeffri. Jeffri is the founder and CEO, brand architect even, of Blaze Experts. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you, and I had shared a little bit in the Chitty Chat session. I have had the great privilege of working with Jeffri-Lynn on a couple of projects with my clients. And Jeffri-Lynn and her company Blaze has also done quite a bit of work for me and my own nonprofit nerd personal and professional brand. So Jeffri-Lynn is just a wealth of knowledge, so much information, definitely an expert in this arena. And I just want you to nerd out with us because you know what? I think you actually have some of these glasses.
I do, and I was going to put them on for you, but you know what? You have that amazing logo behind you. My work.
I know. That is true. That is true. So Jeffri-Lynn, nerd out with us, starting with branding and messaging for nonprofits. What's in a brand and why do nonprofits really need to focus on this?
That is a great question. I'm so glad you asked. Here's something that we were kind of talking about in the chitty chat, whatever it is, that nonprofits do really well is they always have a mission. Like they know why they started. They know what they're here for. And not all for-profit organizations do that. So that is one thing that nonprofits do really well. Because if you think about brand as a mall, and your anchor stores are the mission, vision, values. If you only have those three things, you go in, to the JCPenney Sephora and turn around and leave. So people don't stick around to experience your brand. And most people think, oh, well, I have the brand, I have my anchor stores, so I have a logo. That's just your food court. That's what people know. That's what they talk about. That's where they go to hang out. But that doesn't keep them there either. So if you think about all the stores around the mall as your channels of delivery, how you get your message across, your voice, your tone, your language, your personality, your style. That's what keeps the mall walkers engaged with your brand forever. Those are the things that maybe nonprofits need a little more work on.
What an analogy. I've never heard of it.
No. I've never heard of anyone talk about it that way. But, I think one of the things that's happening right now because of the pandemic is that there are a lot of nonprofits that are assuming additional programming. And so that brand and that messaging is changing. Some are having to shrink, some are expanding, some are pulling in other things. We have new problems or we have amplified problems. So it's I love the way you framed it because I can completely get, what you're saying. And I think it's ingenious. The other thing I'd love, kind of along those lines, is to have you explain to us the difference between internal and external branding, because this is another thing that I think that nonprofits struggle with.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So 360-degree brand, you have to think about not just your client journey, but your donor journey, right? And from greeting to goodbye, that feeling, that community, has to be consistent all the way through because people don't support you or come to you for help because you have a great logo. It's because how you communicate your message. So whether it's volunteers, donors, or even just people who need your services, want to help expand services, change services, pivot on a dime, not like we haven't been doing that lately. But everything has to be consistent from greeting to goodbye. So from the first time they see your logo and they're exposed to your organization till they have benefited from it or worked to benefit it, all the way till they're walking out the door, it should be the same. So your brand should be onboarded to your volunteers, to your board, to your clients.
I think too, even to your staff. And Jeffri-Lynn, you and I have worked together in some different business courses, but we talk about retaining rock star talent. And the nonprofit sector, we won't nerd out too much on this, but the nonprofit sector really struggles with turnover, with burnout, with retention of that rock star talent. So I couldn't agree more. And then I also want to I had the great honor of serving you up on a dish to one of my clients that was looking to rebrand. And so how does an organization that may have, had their name and their logo and their colors and really that journey of greeting to goodbye established for decades, even like 180, 60 years, how does an organization pivot, really to, may I say, modernize their look?
Yeah. Absolutely. You have to think about a great brand will sustain for a really long time, 10 years or more. But you have to change your website, you have to change your campaigns, your things like that. But your brand should sustain you for a really long time, except when what you stood for and what founded you isn't really applicable anymore. Maybe you changed your services. Maybe you're supported by a different sector or you're serving a different sector. Whatever that ends up looking like, that is the time to go back and revisit our mission, vision, values. And it starts with the anchor stores. Have these shifted? If they have, then it's time to move on. And what we've been doing with that client, that food bank that we've been talking about, is make it more about awareness of what they do. And that's really difficult when you have limited resources. We're all operating from a nonprofit standpoint. We're operating on shoestrings. We're bootstrapping it. We're doing things like that. So we don't have a lot of resources to put behind that. So usually it's less about getting awareness out there and more about getting donors, support, volunteers, and clients in here. So we can help more, we can have more impact. But what happens when we've had a shift in our mission, vision, or values, or who we serve, we really do need to go the extra mile to make a change and splash it so people pay attention. And they go, wait, something's happening over there. What is it? And then they come play in your mall.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. A big part of that, and I'd really love to get your expertise on this as well, is video. We talk about branding, and we talk about telling our story and sharing our story. So many of us in the nonprofit sector, it was very charismatic. We did it in person, whether it was in a ballroom or across, a table at lunch. Now that's been changed, probably for the foreseeable future. And so we're looking at video as that tool. And I'm wondering if you could kind of talk us through what that looks like. I know that's a whole nother show in itself, but I'd love for you to plant some seeds for us on that.
I would love to, because I love that you said planting seeds too. Because when you look at your marketing, right, those one-to-one meetings, those donor meetings, that's where you hunt. That feeds everybody today, right? And then you're fishing. So you're pulling in people from everywhere, but your video is your farming. That really is planting the seeds out there because it's reaching a larger audience with your story. And yay, we get to talk about stories. How hard is it to keep up a blog, to write things down when they happen? We're limited in our resources. And as Jarrett said, our own staff and what we can get accomplished with everything that we have to do in our bandwidth. So video is a great way to do it, because even organic video shot on your iPhone or your Android or your little Mevo live broadcasting camera that you bought off, Amazon special deal day, whatever that looks like, you can use that to show the story. Instead of just telling it, you can pull people in with that visual. And you're right, nonprofits are not using that enough. Most of it is because we don't like to see ourselves on camera.
Yeah.
We don't know what angle to do. We don't know what to say. We're feeling awkward. What if we move our hands too much? All of those things keep us from just stepping into that power. And the thing is, do it 3 times, because, we've made Jarrett do that too. Do it 3 times and it starts to get easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. We had a guest, and Jarrett and I were fascinated. It was a head of communications for a very large animal shelter in the Midwest, in Ohio. One of the things she was telling us is that they had to close their volunteer outreach because they couldn't take people into their shelter, to help with the animals. And so the executive director, Jarrett, was it like every Monday or every couple of days would take her cell phone and just walk the length of the shelter, and just kind of riff on what she was seeing, what she wasn't seeing. And it ended up being like a huge, huge thing for this organization.
Yeah. And I think that goes, I think it goes to say that, it doesn't, to Jeffri-Lynn's point, it doesn't have to be a mass production. It doesn't have to be something that, cost a lot, because we often are bootstrapping, and especially during this pandemic, there's been some incurred costs that we did not budget for. So what are some of these inventive, innovative ways that you can bring your mission, and what Jeffri-Lynn has said, show your mission, show your impact visually to your community, and even plant those seeds to farm additional donors, volunteers, stakeholders along the way.
Many clients who benefit from our services as nonprofits are happy to let you hold up a camera, a phone, and say, 15 seconds tops. This is what I get from this. This is what it's done for me. This is how it's changed my life. So impactful.
And even with Zoom, it's like you have this ability to do it virtually, where you can record, you can have that ability to be in different places and just to talk someone kind of through that messaging. And then again, this is a curveball question, Jeffri-Lynn, but how might you repurpose some of that information?
How about that slow lob right there? First of all, what you said is so right. You can record it 15 times before you put it out there. You don't have to do the Facebook Live thing, right? So you can make sure that, you're not you don't have hair across your face or something. You can fix all that. But what you were talking about for repurposing content. So if you think in terms of shallow, deep, and deeper, if you always start with the deepest and just really flesh it out, everything you want to say on a topic, that you want to share with your inside circle, that 360 degree where you're sharing it with your staff, you're sharing it with your clients, you're sharing it with your volunteers and everything. Then come back a level, share that on your website, in your blogs, in your public relations outreach. Then come back and go just high level. Think of it as your best moves on the dance floor. You're just giving this much away, but you're capturing everybody's attention. Yeah, absolutely. Best moves on the dance floor, just that little snippet. So you're not recreating content every minute. You're just reusing the same on a different level to share more with different audiences.
Mm-hmm. So along those lines, we're seeing more and more folks talk about what they're doing to try and, again, connect with what actually goes on versus what people think goes on within an organization. And a lot of that, I think, goes back to branding. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that we're seeing more and more nonprofits or nonprofit leaders go into podcasting. And again, I know that's like a whole nother show or episode, but could you talk about that? I mean, are you seeing nonprofits use that as an educational or connecting tool?
Absolutely. And nonprofits are doing it almost as well as the for-profit sector, because when we talk about telling stories, conversations are where stories start. Storytelling has always been an around, fireside chat, or what did you call it? Chitty chat. People sitting together, telling stories, sharing their knowledge, sharing with one another. That's all a podcast is. And especially now that when you're talking about video, doing it through video as well. So yes, I'm listening to it on my headphones while I'm on my morning hike, but I can also sit while I'm cooking dinner and watch it on the Roku even. Yay. So it really is a way to not just get out the message of what you're doing, your own mission, vision, values, but different ways to use different facets, because a podcast gives you that kind of flexibility that you can say, okay, here's what we stand for. Here's who we help. Here's the impact we're having on our community. Here's our community. Here's who started us. Here's a nod to the past. Here's where we're going in the future. So every single one of those can be topical and then repurposed into every which way you need to get that messaging out, depending on who you are talking to and trying to reach. I think podcasts and video, especially with everyone being home and being on social media and being sick of Netflix binging, that they are consuming content at a level we've never seen before. The danger is the saturation. How do you stand out? How do you be different? And the way you do that, I think, is not so much these days about differentiation because of the saturation. It's about distinction. If you can stand out because of what you do, what you offer, who you impact, what those stories are, instead of trying to say this is how we're different, that has so much more impact, especially on social media today.
Wow. I have a question. Do you, Jeffrey?
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the questions that we love to ask all of our guests during this time, Jeffri-Lynn, is really, what has been some silver linings during this time, during the pandemic? And if you could put your finger on or tell us some stories about what you've seen silver lining for your clients, in particular, those nonprofits, telling the message, dealing with the saturation. You've hit so many hot topics during this time. And I'm just amazed because as long as I've known you, you still have new information for me. So kudos to you for sure. But what has been some of the silver lining opportunities, possibilities that have come up because of the pandemic that maybe not would come up previously? But what are some things that you've seen in particular, again, for the nonprofits?
I have seen nonprofits embracing frugal innovation. Now, we've always had to be frugal because we're trying to do too much with too little. But what has happened is it has allowed us, I think, to take a step back, have some space for creativity. And the thing is, if you have all the budget in the world, you really don't innovate. You just repurpose old ideas.
So true.
But if you're having to really figure out how to make something happen with limited resources, you tend to get more innovative. You get more people involved. You get more ideas in exchange. And then something after the 15 that you have to throw out because they're just not feasible, something ends up happening from it that is brand new and different that we've never seen before. So I think the real benefit to this whole quarantining time has been that we've been given the space to create. And by doing that, we have embraced frugal innovation and really started to make change.
Amen, sister. It's so true. And for me as an entrepreneur, I joke, I was also raised by two amazing entrepreneurs, but I say, I know what it's like to eat steak one month and spam the next. And often that is the case for our nonprofit sector, is really what more can we do with less? And if this has not given us the opportunity, to really reimagine, redesign, tap into others' expertise, and it's just, you're so right. And so I love that, the frugal innovation of our sector.
I like it too, and I think that that's something that is going to really resonate with donors and funders. Mm-hmm. Is that you're not just doing the same old, that you're taking a crisis, moving it through how it's going to impact your stewardship for good or for bad, and trying to navigate all of that. It's brilliant. It really, really is. Hard to believe, but our time is winding down. And so I have another kind of like, if you will, crystal ball. It kind of goes along the lines with what Jarrett just asked you. I know, it's like the Karnak.
Channel it in.
But it's about learning. And I think that's one of the things that Jarrett and I, since we started this program, it's about how we take things forward. Jarrett always says, aside from the silver lining, what are the lessons that you weren't forced to even consider that you did, and now you're going to move forward? And I'm kind of wondering what your thoughts are on this.
The lessons from moving forward. That's a tough one. You saved the hardest for last.
Yeah.
I think the biggest lesson, which is not new, Julia, this is not new, is we have to infuse our brand into everything we do. I think we get carried away with little campaign ideas. Oh, let's do this month. Or we have a new vertical or a new service that we're offering, or we've expanded a service. And so we take and we put all of our time, energy, and attention to that and say, let's promote this. Let's tell this story. Let's get this out there. Oh. And in the meantime, we lose sight of the fact that some people that are being exposed to this new campaign have never heard of us before. They've never seen us before. So we need to make sure that we are still infusing that brand, that mission, vision, and values into everything we do, because then there's a consistency to our marketing that started back here with the mall, but it carries us through all the time. And I think we lose sight of that and we forget that. So the biggest lesson, I think, no matter how small it is, you've got your niece doing your social media, and you've got your brother shooting your video, and you've got all of these things happening because you're just trying to put it all together. It's always important to step back and think strategically, how am I infusing my brand into everything? Because realistically, people shouldn't even have to see your logo to know it's you and your brand.
Right. Ooh. And I think one of the things that I see with nonprofits, I see this with business, but I see it a lot of times with like that C-suite level, that people that internally get fatigued with their own brand. And so they're like, we need to change it. And it's like, yeah, you don't need to change it. You don't want to start all over. You need to determine how you amplify it and navigate it through different channels. But to ditch it all out, unless, like Jarrett said, you have a major change or a major shift and it's warranted. I think it's stay the course for the most part, but redirect it. What lane are you going to be in? And
we can always evolve a brand without taking it all the way back down. There is a chat question. Do you want me to answer that, guys?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm like, so let me pull that up. Any pointers on recruiting for my nonprofit, or is there an upcoming episode I can learn more about this? And that has a lot to do with branding, because if you are not well branded, it's going to make it really hard to work on that. And yes, we've had, tomorrow we have a guest, Katie Warnick, who's going to be coming on from Staffing Boutique, and she's going to talk about that directly. So thank you very much for asking that question. This is a big part of it, because now as we look at the changing landscape of our talent, branding becomes really, really important.
Yeah. Well, and chances are when you're looking at recruiting from a staff standpoint, or your own clients that you want to serve, or your board or your leadership.
Mhm.
If your values are not aligned with theirs, it's not a match and it will not work. So if your marketing messages, all of your channels, all of those things are closely aligned with your mission, vision, and values, it doesn't always attract everybody you want to be working for you, but it will help those you don't want in your space to self-select out and move on to the next thing where they might be better suited. So it really is about aligning values. And if you have those out there and you're promoting them, people who align with them are attracted.
Right.
And I've definitely seen that over time. And my own logo has evolved over the course of me working with Jeffri-Lynn. And I started the Raven Group 11 years ago now. And so that little RG circle used to be all there was. And then I've just really grown into where we are today. And Jeffri-Lynn has been so gracious to share with me so many tips, but you know, I put my voice out there. I put my brand out there in such a clear way that when I get an unsubscribe, it actually used to be depressing. I feel like, what did I do to really upset this person? But now I'm like, wonderful. That's one more weed I've pulled that doesn't align with who I am. They are self-selecting out. And so to know your voice, to know your brand, to know your mission, vision, values as an organization, so important. Jeffri-Lynn, this has been amazing, wonderful. If any of you have questions about, this topic, branding for your nonprofit, please do reach out to us. We do an Asked and Answered every week, typically on a Friday. And so if you have something for Jeffri-Lynn, we'd be more than happy to reach out to her on your behalf and help to get those questions answered for you. Julia Patrick, I cannot believe it is one more show. I think this is like 125 that we've done now, although not quite sure, we should go back and count those. But I've been joined today by Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. This is my Evolve logo for the Nonprofit Nerd. I'm Jarrett Ransom, CEO of the Raven Group. And Jeffri-Lynn Campbell has joined us with Blaze Experts. Check her out at blazeexperts.com. She does so many amazing services, all virtual as well, and really knows the nonprofit sector. So great, thank you for nerding out with us this Monday.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Oh, you've been wonderful. You can see this show and many others on Roku, 35 million homes. So check us out on TV, specifically on your Roku channel. Let's all say a big thank you to our presenting sponsors. Really appreciative of all of you, and just couldn't do this without you. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, this has been another episode of the Nonprofit Show. This is wrapping up your Monday. Tomorrow's Tuesday, in case you've lost the days like me. Last week I thought it was Wednesday and it was only Tuesday. So please join us again tomorrow. This has been wonderful, this conversation. It gives me a lot to think about, and I hope it does you too, for all of the nonprofit nerds and leaders out there. Join us tomorrow for another episode of the Nonprofit Show. And until then, please stay well so you can do well. Thanks, Jeffri.